reminds me, Marty, you better not hook up to the amplifier. There's a slight
Back to the Future turned 40 years old in 2025, and it is still one of the most beloved films ever made. But what most people do not know is how close it came to never existing at all, and how strange the road was from first draft to opening night. So today, we are counting down 20 bizarre things that happened on the set of Back to the Future. Number 20. Michael J. Fox was never supposed to be Marty McFly. This is the one that still feels unbelievable. Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale always wanted Michael J. Fox for the role of Marty McFly. He was their first choice, their only choice, and the person they believed the entire film depended on. There was just one problem. He was completely unavailable. Fox was in the middle of filming Family Ties, the massively popular NBC sitcom where he played Alex P. Keaton, and the show's producer Gary David Goldberg flatly refused to release him for the film. Zemeckis and Gale went through a full casting process. John Cusack, Charlie Sheen, Ralph Macchio, and a very young Johnny Depp all auditioned without success. Under pressure from studio head Sid Sheinberg, who favored him for the role, the part eventually went to Eric Stoltz. Filming began with Stoltz as Marty McFly. For 6 to 7 weeks, the production proceeded with an actor who was, by all accounts, doing serious, committed dramatic work, which was precisely the problem. Back to the Future needed comic timing, lightness, and an almost physical sense of fun. What Stoltz brought was intensity and craft. Both Zemeckis and Gale recognized almost immediately that it was not working, but the production continued while they figured out what to do. Fox shot Family Ties during the day and Back to the Future at night and on weekends for approximately 2 months. He was routinely getting 3 hours of sleep per night.
And where's my reports?
Well, I haven't finished those up yet, but I figured.
Crew members later recalled having to physically carry him to his car at the end of shooting days. The 6 to 7 weeks of footage shot with Stoltz was scrapped entirely. Not a single frame made it into the finished film. And Michael J. Fox, exhausted and running on almost no sleep, gave one of the most effortlessly charming performances in 80s cinema. The lead role being recast 6 to 7 weeks in is extraordinary enough. What happened with the actor who played his father is somehow even stranger. Number 19. Crispin Glover was so nervous he lost his voice. Crispin Glover, who played George McFly, Marty's awkward, eventually triumphant father, was not the most conventional presence on set. He was intensely method in his preparation, deeply committed to a very specific and not entirely predictable creative approach, and by multiple accounts an experience that kept the rest of the cast and crew on their toes. During one crucial scene, Glover became so overwhelmed by nerves that he lost his voice entirely. He could move his mouth and perform the physical actions, but no sound came out. Rather than halt the scene, the production shot the performance silently and then brought Glover back in post-production to record his dialogue separately, with the audio then synced to the footage. Glover himself described the experience on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in 1987, noting that performing the voice separately from the physical performance gave the whole thing a different quality. He was thinking about different things in each pass. Whether that approach produced a better result than a conventional single take would have is something only Glover could say. What is certain is that it is not how most film dialogue gets recorded. Glover survived the first film. His relationship with the sequel was a different matter entirely. Number 18. Crispin Glover sued the production for using his likeness. After Back to the Future became one of the biggest films of 1985, Crispin Glover declined to return for the sequel. The reasons were creative and financial. He had disagreements about the direction of the character and was reportedly dissatisfied with his compensation offer relative to the film's enormous success. The producers, faced with scenes that required George McFly, made a decision they would come to regret. Rather than write the character out, they hired a different actor, dressed him in prosthetics designed to replicate Glover's face and features, and used old footage from the first film alongside the prosthetically altered replacement. Glover found out, and he sued. The lawsuit was settled out of court for a reported $765,000. More significantly, it resulted in a new Screen Actors Guild rule, the Actors' Bill of Rights, that prohibits studios from using an actor's likeness, features, or appearance without their explicit consent. That rule exists today directly because of what happened with Crispin Glover and Back to the Future Part 2. His name never appeared in the sequel's credits. His face, essentially, did. The casting drama did not end with the lead. The studio wanted to use an entirely different vehicle as the time machine, and nearly got their way. Number 17. The studio wanted a Ford Mustang, not a DeLorean. The DeLorean DMC-12 is now so thoroughly identified with Back to the Future that imagining the film without it requires genuine effort. The gull-wing doors, the brushed stainless steel body, the way it looks simultaneously like a science project and a sports car.
No, not hard at all.
It is the perfect movie prop, a vehicle that seems like it was designed specifically to travel through time. It was almost a Ford Mustang. The studio, thinking about promotional partnerships and commercial tie-ins, wanted to strike a deal with Ford and use a Mustang as the time machine. Producer Bob Gale refused. The conversation, by his own recollection, was not particularly diplomatic. Gale's position was that Doc Brown was a mad scientist of singular eccentricity, and a man like Doc Brown did not drive a Mustang. The DeLorean, with its bizarre design history, its stainless steel body, and the fact that the company that made it had gone bankrupt in 1982, was exactly the kind of car that a brilliant, slightly unhinged inventor would acquire and convert into a time machine. After the film's release and success, John Z. DeLorean, the car's creator, wrote a personal letter to Zemeckis, expressing his gratitude and noting that the film had done more for the DeLorean's legend than anything the company had accomplished during its actual operation. The car nearly changed. The film's title nearly changed even more dramatically. Number 16. The studio boss wanted to call it Spaceman from Pluto. Sid Sheinberg, who was the president of MCA and Universal's parent company at the time, did not like the title Back to the Future. He sent a memo to Zemeckis and Gale laying out his objections and proposing a replacement. Spaceman from Pluto. His reasoning, such as it was, involved a concern that films with the word future in the title did not perform well at the box office. He cited several examples. Zemeckis and Gale were horrified. Spaceman from Pluto was not the tone, not the feel, not remotely the film they had made. The title they had chosen was elegant, simple, and did exactly what a good title should do. Producer Steven Spielberg, who was executive producing the film, came up with a characteristically clever solution. He wrote Sheinberg a memo, thanking him for his humorous suggestion and expressing appreciation for his sense of fun. Sheinberg, not wanting to admit that the memo had been serious, dropped the subject. Back to the Future remained Back to the Future. The title survived. The original time machine concept was not so lucky.
All of it. I needed that car tomorrow night, Dad. I mean, do you have any idea?
Number 15. The time machine was originally a refrigerator. Before it was a DeLorean, before it was even a car, the time machine in Back to the Future was a refrigerator. A large, 1950s-style refrigerator that Marty would climb into, which would then transport him through time. The concept was abandoned when Zemeckis and Spielberg became genuinely concerned about the possibility of children climbing into refrigerators at home after seeing the film and becoming trapped. That is a very specific safety concern, but it is also a very reasonable one. And the change from a stationary refrigerator to a mobile car had an enormous effect on the film's structure. Suddenly, the time machine could be involved in chases, could be placed in dramatic situations, could arrive and depart in ways that generated their own narrative momentum. The DeLorean does not just carry Marty through time. It drives the plot in a way a refrigerator sitting in a lab never could have. The time machine changed shape. The original ending changed completely. Number 14. The original ending was entirely different. The ending that made it into the finished film, Doc Brown appearing in the flying DeLorean to take Marty and Jennifer to the future, was not the original plan. The original ending was considerably more restrained and considerably more open-ended. In the version that was written but never filmed, the story concluded in 1985 with George McFly finding a 1955 newspaper that contains a photograph of Marty performing Johnny B. Good at the school dance.
But the only power source capable of generating 1.21 gigawatts of electricity is a bolt of lightning.
George stares at the photograph, recognizes his own son's face, and begins to say the words, "It can't be, but it is," before the film ends. No sequel setup, no flying DeLorean, just George McFly looking at a photograph and letting the audience draw their own conclusions. The ending was changed because the filmmakers eventually wanted a more satisfying resolution for the audience, rather than a cliffhanger. The "to be continued" that appeared at the end of the actual film was added almost as an afterthought, a playful suggestion, not a firm commitment. Zemeckis and Gale had no concrete plans for a sequel when the film was released. The ending changed. So did the entire climax, which was originally going to involve a nuclear explosion. Number 13. The original climax involved a nuclear power plant and an explosion. In early drafts of the script, the climax of Back to the Future was built around a break-in at a nuclear power plant. Doc and Marty were going to steal plutonium from the facility to power the time machine, and the sequence was going to involve a nuclear explosion that destroyed the surrounding area. The nuclear power plant sequence was scrapped because it was both prohibitively expensive and tonally inconsistent with the rest of the film. An actual nuclear explosion leveling a fictional American city is a fairly dark event for the final act of a time travel comedy. The replacement, harnessing a lightning bolt at the clock tower, achieved the same narrative function, namely getting Marty back to 1985, while being visually spectacular, emotionally satisfying, and considerably less morally complicated. The clock tower solution also gave the film one of its best structural devices, the thunderstorm. A natural event with a fixed time creates the kind of ticking clock that drives a climax, and Zemeckis used it brilliantly. The climax was reinvented. The script itself was rejected by almost every studio in Hollywood before anyone agreed to make it.
I almost forgot to bring extra plutonium. How do I ever expect to get back one pellet?
Number 12. The script was rejected 40 times. Back to the Future was rejected by approximately 40 different studios before Universal Pictures agreed to make it. Columbia Pictures passed. Disney passed. Not because they disliked the script, but because they felt the implied relationship between Marty and his mother Lorraine was too suggestive for the Disney brand. The combination of time travel, comedy, and a ticking clock third act was apparently difficult for studios to categorize. What eventually got the film greenlit was Zemeckis completing Romancing the Stone in 1984. Its commercial success gave him enough credibility with Universal that they were willing to take the risk. The studio almost never made the film. The actor who would play Doc Brown almost never took the role. Number 11. Christopher Lloyd almost turned down. Doc Brown. Christopher Lloyd, now so thoroughly identified with Doc Brown that the role seems cosmically predetermined, almost did not take it. His initial reaction to the script was negative. He was aiming to be taken seriously as a dramatic actor and felt a science fiction comedy was not the vehicle for that ambition. It took considerable persuasion to get him to Los Angeles for a meeting with Zemeckis, and only after that in-person conversation did Lloyd agree. His preparation for the role drew on Albert Einstein's visual appearance and the conductor, Leopold Stokowski. He developed Doc Brown's hunching posture partly as a practical solution to the 7-inch height difference between himself and Fox, and partly as a character choice expressing Doc's total absorption in his work. Lloyd nearly walked away. The script nearly had a very different animal as Doc Brown's companion. Number 10. Doc Brown's pet was almost a chimpanzee named Shemp. In early drafts of the script, Doc Brown had a pet chimpanzee named Shemp. The chimpanzee was written as a companion for the doc, assisting in the lab and adding comic relief. Universal Studios head Sid Sheinberg. Yes, the same Sheinberg who wanted to rename the film Spaceman from Pluto intervened on this one too, though his reasoning was at least backed by data. He told Zemeckis and Gale, flatly, that no film with a chimpanzee had ever made money. Gale pushed back, citing Every Which Way But Loose. Sheinberg pointed out that Every Which Way But Loose featured an orangutan, not a chimpanzee, and that the distinction was meaningful. The chimpanzee became a dog. The dog was named Einstein. Einstein became the first time traveler in the film, the passenger in the DeLorean's initial unmanned test at the Twin Pines Mall, and in his small way, one of the more memorable supporting characters in the movie. Shemp the chimp became Einstein the dog. The film's clock tower set had a history of its own that most people never noticed. Number 9. The clock tower was a Universal backlot set built in 1948. The Hill Valley Town Square, with the clock tower, the diner, the movie theater, the entire period-accurate Main Street, was not built for Back to the Future. It was an existing backlot set at Universal Studios called Courthouse Square, constructed in 1948 and used in dozens of films and television productions over the decades. Back to the Future is simply the production most closely associated with it. The same set appeared in To Kill a Mockingbird in 1962. It appeared in Gremlins in 1984, the same year Back to the Future began production. It has been seen in numerous other films and television productions before and since. The clock tower that Marty races toward in the film's climax had been part of the Universal backlot for 37 years before Doc Brown ever dangled from its hands. The clock tower was borrowed. The film's attention to the actual time in the clock tower sequence was something else entirely.
It makes perfect sense. He's coming.
Number 8. The lightning strike timing was exactly right, down to the second. Doc Brown tells Marty, during the planning of the clock tower sequence, that he has a window of precisely 7 minutes and 22 seconds to get the DeLorean up to speed and intercept the lightning strike. It is a throwaway piece of dialogue, a number delivered in the rush of exposition. If you time the sequence in the finished film from the moment Doc delivers that information to the moment the lightning strikes, it is exactly 7 minutes and 22 seconds. This was deliberate. Zemeckis and his editing team worked to ensure that the number Doc announces is the actual running time of the sequence. It is the kind of detail that virtually no audience member notices on a first viewing, and that rewards every subsequent viewing with a quiet satisfaction. The timing was precise. The film's soundtrack almost did not include the song most closely associated with it. Number 7. Huey Lewis and the News almost didn't write the soundtrack song. The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News is now inseparable from Back to the Future. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Song. It reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1985. It is, for a significant portion of the film's audience, the sound of that summer. Huey Lewis almost said no. He was initially reluctant to write for a film soundtrack, partly because he had never done it before, and partly because the working title suggestion, a song called Back to the Future, did not appeal to him. The breakthrough came when he realized that the song did not need to be called Back to the Future, and did not need to be literally about the film's plot. It could simply be the sound of the film's world. The Power of Love, written and recorded relatively quickly, did exactly that. Lewis also appears in the film itself, in a brief cameo as a member of the audition panel who rejects Marty's band for being too loud. A joke that, given that the panel is hearing Huey Lewis's own band, is one of the more quietly perfect in-jokes of the decade. The music almost wasn't there. A key member of the cast left the franchise entirely, and the reason was both sad and completely understandable. Number 6. Claudia Wells left after Part 1 and was replaced by Elizabeth Shue. Claudia Wells played Jennifer Parker, Marty's girlfriend in the original film. Her performance was warmly received, and when production on Back to the Future Part 2 began, she was expected to return. She did not. Wells withdrew from the role because her mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and caring for her family was, by her own account, simply more important than reprising the character. Elizabeth Shue stepped in and played Jennifer in parts 2 and 3. Wells later described the experience of watching Shue on screen in the role she had originated as a strange kind of out-of-body experience, recognizing a character she had created being inhabited by someone else. Wells eventually returned to acting after her mother recovered, and has spoken publicly about the experience with the kind of clarity that comes from having made a decision she has no regrets about. The choice she made was the right one. It simply meant that Jennifer Parker would be played by two different people across the trilogy. Jennifer changed. The actress who played Marty's mother in 1955 had her own complicated relationship with the role.
This is more serious than I thought. Apparently your mother is amorously infatuated with you instead of your father.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Number 5. Leah Thompson had to fall in love with Michael J. Fox, who she found hilarious. Leah Thompson, who played Lorraine Baines, Marty's mother in 1955, the teenager who develops an unexpected romantic interest in her own future son, had a specific challenge that does not come up in most acting jobs. She had to play genuine romantic attraction towards someone while both she and the entire production knew the whole scene was funny. Thompson has said in interviews that Fox was so naturally funny on set that keeping a straight face during the romantic scenes was one of the more technically demanding things she had to do in the film. Fox had the ability to be simultaneously charming and slightly ridiculous, which was exactly what the scenes required, but which made playing the sincere half of the equation genuinely difficult. The fact that Thompson pulled it off, that Lorraine's crush on Marty in 1955 feels both comic and oddly tender, is a testament to her skill as an actress operating in a situation that had every reason to collapse into parody. The romantic scenes were delicate. The physical requirements of the role created their own complications. Number 4. Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox had to hide their height difference. Christopher Lloyd stands approximately 6 feet 1 inch tall. Michael J. Fox stands approximately 5 feet 4 inches tall. In a film where the two characters spend most of their time in close physical proximity, running, talking, driving, panicking, that 7-inch difference required constant management. The production solution was elegant and completely invisible to most viewers. Lloyd developed Doc Brown's characteristic posture, the slight forward hunch, the way he bends toward whoever he is addressing, partly as a character trait and partly as a practical way of reducing the visible height differential in frame. Camera angles were carefully chosen to minimize the discrepancy. The choreography of their scenes together was designed with the gap in mind. The result is that most people who have seen the film multiple times could not accurately estimate the height difference between the two actors. The height difference was hidden in plain sight. One of the film's most famous props was almost never made the way we know it. Number 3. The California Raisins almost had a scene in the film. This one requires a moment. The California Raisin Advisory Board, the organization behind the popular animated California Raisins advertising campaign, paid the production $25,000 for a product placement scene in Back to the Future. The scene, as written, had Marty McFly eating a bowl of California raisins. The scene was filmed. It did not work. By Bob Gale's account, the raisins photographed in a way that made the bowl look as if Marty was eating dirt. The California Raisin Advisory Board, upon seeing the footage, threatened to sue. The situation was resolved by returning their $25,000 and cutting the scene entirely. The California Raisins do not appear in Back to the Future. They almost did, and they looked like dirt. The raisins were cut. The film's sequel setup was added so late in production that the star of the film did not know about it until years later. Number 2. Michael J. Fox did not know. There was a sequel, until he watched the film on VHS. The words "to be continued" appear at the end of Back to the Future, the setup for what would eventually become Part 2. When the film was released in theaters in 1985, those words were not there. They were added later for the home video release, after the sequel had been greenlit. Michael J. Fox had not been told about the sequel. He was not informed that the ending of the film he had starred in had been modified. He found out there was a sequel, and that the sequel apparently already existed in at least tentative form. When he sat down to watch the film on VHS at home, saw "to be continued" appear on his television screen, and immediately called his agent to find out what was going on. The sequel came as a surprise to its own star. The final entry on this list is the detail that the whole production ran on. Something that sounds like a simple choice, but that shaped every frame of the film. Number 1, the entire film was built around making the audience laugh, and Eric Stoltz could not do it. Everything returns to the beginning. The reason Eric Stoltz was replaced, the reason Michael J. Fox endured 2 months of 3-hour nights, the reason the entire 5 weeks of footage was abandoned, it all comes down to one thing. Back to the Future was a comedy. Not a comedy with dramatic elements, not a drama with funny moments, but a full-tilt, precise, tonally consistent comedy that required its lead actor to make the audience laugh in situation after situation that could just as easily be played for drama. Stoltz was a serious actor. He approached Marty McFly as a serious character. He gave performances that were, by all accounts, accomplished and committed. And Zemeckis, watching the footage each evening, could not find the laughs. The film was not funny with Stoltz in it, and a Back to the Future that was not funny was not Back to the Future. Fox arrived and everything changed. His comic instincts, the double takes, the physical reactions, the way he played confusion and panic and joy, turned scenes that Stoltz had played straight into the effortless comedy the film needed. The 5 weeks of footage that cost several $million and was scrapped entirely was simply the price of getting the tone right. And the tone being right is why, 40 years later, the film is still the film it was always supposed to be. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more fascinating stories.